link to the summary of that listening session and the action items that resulted from that listening session is available on our website for this grant at www.portlandoregon.gov/cannabis tax. We also work closely with the Office of Equity and Human Rights on shaping the final product. The year 2 priority funding areas, $490,000 was allocated in year 2 for expungement and record clearing, workforce development. Those two were carried over from year 1, and an additional funding priority area of reentry housing was added for year 2. Prosper Portland again received funds, $210,000 to continue small business development and technical support. Jeanette Lindy is here to speak more about that piece of work in just a moment. So our selection process, we brought together a review panel of 6 community members and 1 city staff from the Portland Housing Bureau to participate in the review and recommendation process on grants this year. They were not prepared for the volume of work that we gave to them with 32 applications, but they rose to the challenge and donated more than 230 hours of time to this process. So I'd like to take a moment to thank them and acknowledge that gift. The review panel process included an independent scoring process, which was then followed by an all-day in-person.
I wouldn't call it volunteer. They got paid their wages.
Of the 32 applications received and the $3 million in need that were expressed by those applications, the review panel landed on a final recommendation of 6 projects for funding. And they also recommended that all year 1 projects receive funding for a second year.
Now that's interesting.
We're here today to request approval to fund these 6 projects at $631,321, and we're requesting a retroactive start date of October 1st, 2019 to allow for that 9-month grant cycle. The review panel recommended that the city utilize $141,321 of the currently available fiscal year 1920 funds to allow us to fund the top 6 applications, which did include a second year of funding for the first year grantees. This leaves $758,679 for the fiscal year 1920 cycle, which we will be calling year 3. Projects proposed for continued funding in year 2 are the year 1 grantees, Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, aka POIC, at Rosemary Anderson High School for their construction pre-apprenticeship program, Metropolitan Public Defender Services for their community coalition record clearing clinics, and Green Hop for their Green Hop Academy. New projects for year 2 are Southeast Works with their Youth Works project, VOS for their Building Economic Power for Day Laborers project, and Constructing Hope for their Building Equity project. Summaries of all these projects are in Exhibit B of the ordinance packet and will also be posted on the grant webpage after final approval. And even better yet, as Brandon mentioned, representatives from all of these organizations are here to speak to their work and share the impact of their work directly with you themselves. The note, one year 2 applicant requested a small scope modification after the review panel process, and it was primarily to increase pay rates for the participants, the pay stipends for the participants. In order to do that, they needed to make a reduction on their internship program, but there's no change to the overall requested amount. So most importantly, what have we learned?
Could you go back to the last slide?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Go through this one again, so we're reducing a 10-week internship from 20 participants to 10.
Yes, so their request was to increase the rate for both their apprenticeship program and their internship program to get closer to a living wage for those participants. They are not requesting funds for anything beyond those stipends for participants. They are contributing the other program costs for that. And in order to make those changes, they increased the pay rate for participants. They made a reduction in the number of the 10-week internships from 20 to 10.
And is that still a good value for the money that we're investing in that program? And we're getting half of the participants as compared to what was agreed to.
I believe that is yet to be seen fully, only because we do not have the year one outcomes yet. And as we have all spoken to, this is a learning process, and we are working to even better define for ourselves what how best to support all of our grantees in meeting our expectations around building wealth and power for these communities that have been most impacted. And so that is part of our process in continuing to improve and refine and shape this grant. So along that line, what we have learned and what we still need to do, we have received, all of these points are based on feedback that we've received directly from grantees, applicants, and community members, and also our review panelists. So we are continuing to increase our level of support for applicants both before and after the application process. An example of that is everybody who was not recommended for funding this cycle received an offer of a 15-minute one-on-one meeting to discuss the details of their specific application and how that might be strengthened in the next cycle. We are also hosting for year 3 a grant writing workshop as part of the pre-funding announcement opportunities. We will continue to improve our grant making process. There are lots of things that we can do to fine-tune and improve the support that we provided for both through the funding announcement and also to the review panelists. Some of the feedback we have gotten and we are already working towards is continuing to seek out strategic opportunities to make upstream changes and investments to even broaden the impact of these funds and increase communication and collaboration across bureaus, as well as looking for policy opportunities aligned with this work. And also to deepen community relationships and engagement around this work. One of the big takeaways from the 50+ conversations that I have had over the last 7 months, I think can be summarized in a statement, not a statement, but a clear statement here that I'm going to try and communicate. One thing that stood out in all of my conversations was this, that work in reparative and restorative justice requires a thoughtful and strategic plan, and that our policy making needs to be trauma-informed, and we need to be using trauma-informed policy stewardship in partnership with the communities that we intend to serve. Without these things in place, people, processes, power, all of the pieces in all their forms will default to what is familiar, and that will work against us in our work, if this truly is our goal with the use of these funds. So we have really taken that feedback to heart, and we are working to identify some clear action items for year 3. We'll hand the microphone off to Jeanette to further discuss.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Happy to be here. I'm Jeanette Ward Horton. I'm Executive Director of New Leaf Project, and we are receiving funds from Prosper Portland and from the social equity grants ultimately to support the investment into minority and women-owned businesses, minority and women-owned cannabis businesses. So I'm going to share with you just some information about why this is important and some thoughts around how we can think about the future of these grants. So let's start with this fact, because it's important to ground ourselves in this and ensure we're not coming at this from a stereotyped or prejudiced perspective. Many studies have shown that adults across races use cannabis at similar rates. However, we can see in the next 2 slides, this is arrest rates, and the slide after is conviction rates in the state of Oregon. You can see the disproportionate targeting of first, African American communities, second, Native American communities, and I think it's really important to call out what communities we're talking about specifically so that we can understand, as Brandon says, when we start to get visible into who we're impacting, that we're clear we need to be impacting positively through these funds, African American communities and Native American communities first and second. Conviction rates, if you move forward, get interesting. You still have trends of African Americans being convicted at higher rates, but Native Americans jump up here. So we've got to keep our lens on both of those communities and ensuring that these funds really impact positively those 2 groups. If you think Liberal Portland's any different before we move on, it's not. I have arrest records from 2006 to 2014 of Portland, and absolutely African Americans are targeted the most, and the Native Americans are actually arrested at similar rates to their population, but nobody else is for cannabis arrests.
Thank you. I am very curious on this data because I think most people know that Hispanic is not a category where we are collecting data in a way that we can actually add to the demographic information, right? My work in criminal justice has taught me that a lot of times Hispanic individuals are misidentified as being white. And so I'm curious as to, because when you look at the chart, you would think Latino community is not as egregiously impacted, but I would argue with that if that was what we were telling people was so. Anybody else?
I would also add to that if you think about cannabis criminalization over time, that there is also data there that we are actively searching for right now in advance of year 3 to have a sense of the intergenerational impact, and given that the forefront of cannabis criminalization was driven in part by some,
you know, you can just say it, right? From unequal, racially focused criminal justice activity, right?
yes,
We should not
against
be
Mexican
shy.
American
Yes.
immigrants.
Yes, we should not be shy about actually just saying this is what it
If you
was,
notice the
this
term
is what it
says
still is,
felony
and this is why we got a
conviction.
lot of-
Yeah.
Because that number would be much higher
So that's why
overall.
we
Of
are
arrests.
focused right
See
now
where
on
I'm
taking
going?
a
Yeah.
look at over
That's a
time,
conviction.
what does this look like, not just for the past 10 years, but what does it look like for the past 80 years?
Hispanic Americans also, or Latino Americans also get classified as black or white versus Latino, so you're absolutely right, Commissioner Morris. All right, so this is really important for understanding. There's a term called compounded deprivation that a Harvard researcher named Robert Sampson coined that talks about how arrest and conviction really impacts an entire family. It isn't the one individual. The economic impact impacts the mother, the father, the brothers, the sisters, the spouses, the children, and the children of the children. Unfortunately, data is telling us that African Americans are the one group where your children are likely to fare worse than you are economically. And that's not what we want for our communities and for our families and for our cities. The reason for that you can see on this slide, because arrest and incarceration results in all of these other things. You can't get loans for businesses, you can't get loans for schools, you're denied housing in better neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those things lead to this web that then leaves you in a depressed socioeconomic situation that gets worse generationally. So what we do at New Leaf is
Excuse me, no, I just wanted to correct the slide, I'm sorry. If you'll go back